I'm excited to talk to you today. We've got several subjects that are very pressing. Oh, right. All right, I've got everybody up on live stream. Hi, Carolina. Nice to see you. Had some very important questions come in this morning about soul skill sets, purpose, and of course, grief. And so I wanted to talk a little bit with you, but we've got 2 minutes till, so I want to make sure everybody gets on. We're just going to hang out for a minute. Um, so, hi, Martine. So Caroline asks, if booking a personal session, how long do I have to wait? It depends right now because I need to add more spots on my calendar. And so hang tight on that. Look at that in a few days. And when you check out the calendar, it'll show you what spots are open. Right now I'm looking at October, I believe. So not too bad. There's been times where I've been booked out for 6 months straight. So this isn't so bad. Yeah, thanks, Caroline. I'd love to work with you, of course. Very good. And so, Mary, I'm really glad you came. And I saw you raised your hand. And if you would type your question into the Q&A, I'll be able to look at that for you today. And so for those of you who might be new to our circle call today, I focused in on really pretty general questions and not one-on-one sort of questions or personal readings of sorts in this particular format. But if you really need some extra help, join me on a group call because you can get in quite quickly for that. And it can be very profound to be set up with a really nice group of people who are meant for you, right? So the group calls are maximum of 6 people, and each person gets a 20-minute reading and any feedback from the group, which makes those calls very, very unique. And with a purchase of a group call, you get 2 group calls so you can follow up on whatever subject you were looking at or have a new question. So that'll be really nice for those of you who want some extra support right now. I have made some extra group call dates. So come join me if you really need some extra, that extra leg up. I'm here. I've got your back. I'm ready to serve you. That's why we do these calls, is to check in, talk about resources, talk about what's going on. Yeah, on my site. So if you go to seerandscientist.com and then you go down to offerings, you'll see that group call offering at the top. Yeah. Nice to see you, Daki. Very good. And good morning, Julia. Glad to have you. Hi, Enid. I'm so glad to see you. Always nice to have you. Yeah, so Lynn mentioned that group calls are really helpful. I love them because people get to give feedback that might come through them too, because we're all wise. And that's so helpful and supportive. It's interesting too that Source will set up the right 6 people every time. And a lot of times the folks on those calls, they say, hey, I really needed to hear what that person's reading said. So that's really neat. Hi, Marie and Meg. Glad to have you. Good. So let's get started. I want to talk about a few things. Someone mentioned the 8-8 Lionsgate. And I have been asked about cosmological events lately. So I want to tell you what my perspective on that is. I do believe we are intimately affected by the cosmos. So if Jupiter is in a particular arena, we get affected by that in very subtle ways. And that's some measurable stuff. At the same time, humans are really adept at putting meaning on everything. So they put meaning on everything, and what I try to avoid is externalizing what needs to be internal, right? So if something goes wrong and I say, oh, it's just Mercury retrograde, that might be true, but it might not. It's very hard to say. And I like to make sure I'm not putting what responses, what needs to be addressed on the inside, outside of myself. And I think that cosmologically we do that sometimes. Now, at the same time, even our star families have always said, look, the way the stars are aligned has an important effect. These things are something that humans have noticed for many hundreds of thousands of years, and they have based many rituals and openings and doorways off of the cosmos. So it's a fine line, right? So we got to walk that fine line. We want to make sure not to externalize what needs to be internal, and we also want to be willing to be part of the cosmological situation we're in, because we have a galactic playing ground that we're involved in, not just an earthly one. So that's my general perspective on that. I'm not very good at telling when a big doorway is happening exactly, unless someone says, oh, 8-8 is the Lion's Gate. The only doorways I tend to really focus on are full and new moons and solstices and equinoxes. So although that's not really my forte, I do study cosmology very carefully. And I'm looking right now at the fact that I believe that there never has been and is not, it doesn't exist. I don't think dark matter is real. And there's a lot of theories finally coming out more well established about dark matter. So that's going to be really interesting over the next several decades to see how that unfolds. But that's the kind of stuff I'm looking at: quantum physics, dark matter, those sorts of things. As for alignments and zodiac and cosmology, I always just say, make sure you're addressing what's inside. Because if the change happens in you, quantumly, it fractals out beyond you. It has an incredible dramatic effect on the world, the changes that occur in you. If you think Mercury retrograde has power over human beings, turn your face background and look at how humans actually manifest. Mercury can't manifest. It might be a conscious planet orbiting a conscious sun, but our human bodies are very special, and we can manifest better than pretty much any other beings on this planet. That's why humans have had so much attention, because our bodies are very unique. We're capable of being able to feel emotions. Many beings cannot feel emotions. And we're capable of manifesting incredible energies on this planet and elsewhere by making sure we take care of the inside first. So if we want real culture change, if we want real society change, if we want to make sure Mercury retrograde isn't going to bug us, let's work on the inside. So how do we do that? Well, first and foremost, we need to remove the calluses of trauma that build up. And trauma makes everything really dense, just like a callus does. So then light can't move through very well. And we build up reactions and triggers. We build up all that trauma. We need to address that first, because then when you're in a state of presence in the moment and you're able to address the trauma fully, you're going to be able to manifest better into the material and societal world that we live in. And that's really key. So all the desires you have to be a better psychic, to be a more adept empath, to be able to really tap into your divine knowing, your intuition. All those come with the healing of your trauma. Trauma is the number one thing that blocks us all as human beings. It makes us very dense. It makes us feel very isolated. Even though that's an illusion, it makes us incapable of truly manifesting. And if you've heard me talk about manifesting, I like to address the root of that word. Manu means hands. So manifesting is a process that requires you to visually, in your mind, be able to imagine what you're wanting. Then you're going to feel it fully. So you got to use your brain mind's psychic ability to imagine. That is what a psychic ability is. It is imagination. That is the gateway for psychic ability. So you're going to imagine what you want. You're going to feel it fully. What does that feel like to have that? And then you ground it in your body. And in each moment you ask, what's one thing I can do right now to fully create a situation that will cultivate what I am wanting to create or manifest? So that last step often gets forgotten because you got to use your psychic body, your emotional body, and then your physical body to manifest. We will leave that last step out because we don't realize that we must ground all of those things in the 3D, right? So this goes for all of us when it comes to trauma in general, how you're going to be able to do that better as you remove the callus. Those calluses are like weeds in your garden, and you want to plant the seeds of light, the seeds of enlightenment, the seeds of the beautiful things that you're wanting for your life. Humans are very, very good at this when they finally get past the trauma. Now, there's lots of different kinds of trauma, right? Some of us have been going through it really big time lately. I've been watching a lot of people spin out and a lot of people checking out. My husband's friend just got killed in a car wreck. The masculine and the feminine both are struggling, trying to continue to be here on the earth. A lot of people who are either spinning out or checking out. So what does spin out mean? Spinning out, well, you know how that feels when you absolutely feel like you're on a roller coaster ride of emotions and you don't seem to have any control, and you're in full reaction. You're having a really hard time feeling grounded. You're having a really hard time connecting and staying present. You might be worrying about the past or the future or money or bills. You might be in a state of full-blown reaction because of something that someone said or an event that happened. And maybe that builds up. Maybe a bad event happens and then a bunch of other stuff happens just to pile it on. And then you feel like you're going nuts. That's a spin out. So why do people spin out? Well, a lot of trauma's being triggered all at once. I call it pinging. So an event will happen, an energy happens. And if you've got any trauma, either ancestral trauma or personal trauma, it might ping you. And then you're going to be in reaction that's very hard to control. So then you literally feel like you're spinning around and around in a hurricane of emotion. I mean, this literally just happened to me the other day. And I'm noticing it happen more and more. Why is this happening more and more? Why are people checking out right now? Well, I want to zoom out with you for a second, because I like to go into the personal and then back out, back in and out, right? So if we zoom out for a moment, what's really going on the earth? The frequency's rising, and the earth has made her final sifting of consciousness. So when you sift something, you gotta shake it up, right? So that frequency, the oscillation, causes heavy, dense stuff to come to the surface. Well, that gives us a clue of about what's happening to human beings at the moment, because we are deeply affected by that. All of our stuff, especially the emotional, spiritual density, gets risen to the surface. So, for example, I've got plenty of ego to go through the sifting process. Big chunks of my ego have been coming to the surface. I'm noticing how I have my hooks in people around me, how I'm attached to their outcomes. I'm attached to my children's outcomes and my husband's outcome. And then if my husband spins out, he just takes me right along with him because he's close to me. He's in my field. How do we manage that? Well, first, you got to really notice it. You got to say it out loud. You got to name it. Got to get it out of your subconscious so it's not just settling in your subconscious. So I grab my husband and I say, whoa, 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 we're spinning. Let's sit down and have a cup of coffee and address this. So recently, my cat was killed by my neighbor's dog. And my husband really spun out. He's very, very attached to our animals. And so this was, of course, completely unexpected and horrifying, and it's caused a tiff between my neighbors and I, which is something that neither Drew nor I want. I'm sure they don't want it either. No one does. But I'm watching a lot of people continue to be in denial about reality, right? Because it wasn't the dog's fault, it's the neighbor's fault. It never really is the dog's fault. It's going to be their person's fault, right? I'm with Cesar Millan on that. It's usually the human. But, we can't ask for the human necessarily to change. That's not our prerogative. So who has to change here? It's going to be us. So my husband was very upset. Obviously, everyone was. And we went through a lot of pain and grief. He thought he'd gotten through it. And then a raccoon came and ate a couple of our chickens, even though we had put up this giant net around the coop. And I live on a working farm. And, he said to me, this has been going on for 3 years because we've lost 30 chickens in 3 years to animals coming out of the woods. We live right up against the woods in the middle of nowhere. And the possums and raccoons, they get hungry and they want to eat chicken because, well, it's good. We like chicken too. So they come and they eat our chickens. 30 chickens later, 3 years later, Drew's like, this has been going on for 3 years. And I said, no, it hasn't. It's been going on for like 500,000 years. So it's been going on a lot longer than that. It's us against the woods, right? But my point is that the loss of those chickens really kind of pushed him over the edge. He thought he was through the grief of losing our cat. And suddenly he realized, I not only don't want to lose any more animals, but I'm really tired of killing the animals that come out of the woods because it makes him feel like a bad person. He doesn't want to be part of that humans against nature thing anymore, which is big, right? That's a big polarity. So I pointed that out to him. Hey, that's okay. Let's go ahead and sell our chickens. We can find them a safer home. And then we don't have to deal with that. And that's okay. But he finally had to recognize he had to process it, right? How do you process that? How do you process this grief of losing our people, all these people checking out suddenly? Some of them young, some of them old. And all these people checking out because the vibration of the earth is shifting and perhaps their embodiment, whatever their soul's journey is, their embodiment couldn't stay here. So maybe they'll come back and their embodiment then can function better here. Or maybe they have more work to do in other dimensions. There's a lot of reasons why people might check out. Those are some of the top 2. Nonetheless, how do we really deal with it? Well, in that moment, my husband's crying the kitchen table. And he says, I feel like a bad person. I can't do this anymore. And I said, good. Now you know what that feeling is. Welcome it. That's the number one thing you can do immediately when you have an overwhelming reaction, trigger, emotional response. You need to welcome it. Because if we deny it, if we try to beat around the bush, it's going to come back and over and over and over again. And even worse, it might multiply in your field, because everything that a human puts in their field, it fractals out, it multiplies. This is one of the biggest things I think human beings are going to fully realize over the next decade. And like very intensely over the next few years, is that everything you have in your field, every thought, every hope, every desire, attachment, egoic structure, judgment, angry response, trigger, trauma, you name it, multiplies in the field. That is the nature of this universe. If you have a horrible thought running in your mind, a negative program, it will act like a seed in your reality, and it will continue to grow, and it will affect the reality around you. To fully welcome a difficult emotion gives you full advantage to move through it so that it won't remain. Does that mean it won't come up again? No, it just means that particular layer of it won't come back again. So let me give you an example. When I was a teenager, I had really bad cystic acne and my face basically looked like hamburger. So I had this horrible program in my mind that said, you're so ugly, no one will love you, right? That's like a big weed in my garden. And that would multiply into my life. And in fact, it would affect my relationships so dramatically that I would attract people who would abuse me for that big weakness I had of self-loathing around the way I looked, right? So later on, I was able to what I call pull the weed out of the trauma. So I pulled that big, huge, holy cow weed out. But what happens when you pull weeds? They leave behind little strands of roots, right? And literally, I mean, this is years ago that I've done that work. At least 15, 20 years at least now that I've fully shifted out all that trauma from having such bad skin. But what was left behind? Little strands of things. So the other day I was putting makeup on for another video thing I was doing, and I heard a negative program in my head. And this gives you a clue of how this is, what this is like with somebody who is doing processing all the time, because it's a way of life that you don't stop, no matter if you're enlightened or not, you never stop processing. So I fully heard this program say, I hope nobody notices your blotchy skin. Now that's a million light years away from, you're so ugly, no one will love you. But it's related, isn't it? It's related to that. It's just one of those little strands of root that got left behind. And so I noticed it was like, oh, there's a negative program. And so here's what I do to erase them. And this really works because you can reprogram your brain and get rid of those little random strands of negative programs, including big, huge, holy cow programs too, by doing this. So if you hear that, this is what I did. I said, thank you so much for trying to help me, because that program was trying to help me, right? It's trying to help me live in a world that's very judgmental about what someone looks like. Well, that's not the world that I want to live in. I don't live in the Matrix. I'm free. I know that most people aren't judging me for how blotchy my skin is. So I know that, but my trauma doesn't remember that or know that. That's okay. So I say, thank you so much for trying to help me, because that gratitude pauses the program. Then I say, I require you to erase now. I am the soul in charge. I've got a different plan. My plan is to fully be in this present moment. And then I take a big, deep breath. So at that point, then I can expect that that program will shift. If it comes up again, I'll keep doing the reprogramming of it until it's gone. It works pretty fast to do this. So what you've done then is you've pushed pause with gratitude. Then you tell it it's time to erase now. Then you remind the whole body, I'm the soul in charge of this body, not vice versa. So you have to listen to me. And then you say, I have a different plan. That's your reprogram. Maybe it's something as simple as staying present, focused, happy, whatever you want. And then you take that deep breath, because that's your enter button. It tells the whole body that this is okay for you to do. And you're welcome to erase this program fully, because I'm the one telling you to do it. Who's me? The soul that's animating the body. That's really who I am. And it's really who you are. Right? So that's how to erase negative programs. Then let's go back to the trauma piece. So for my husband, I had him fully welcome the shame he felt over feeling like he had to kill these predators coming out of our forest. And I said, you need to fully welcome this, because it's a deep trauma. It's beyond just losing our cat and chickens. And so he welcomed it. He didn't deny it. Along the road to enlightenment, there's all these signposts. And the signposts are fear and struggle and trauma. It's those moments of spinning out. You want to follow those signposts, because they lead you upwards into higher consciousness. You want to welcome the fear, the pain, the grief, the anger. Fully welcome it, so you can find out where it came from. Some of that might be obvious. My husband's welcoming his grief over losing his friend. It's obvious that the trauma is near and dear to him, because his friend just died. That's what triggered his grief. So that one's obvious. Sometimes it's not so obvious. Why am I reacting right now? Well, if you welcome it and you follow that thread, you're going to find one of three things at the end of that thread. You're going to either find your own personal trauma, or you're going to find ancestral trauma, or you're going to find a negative program. So for me, I found that negative program, obviously, while I was putting makeup on the other day. My husband, he's got lots of trauma from his whole childhood, layers of it that had a lot of effect over how he felt the other day. So he's going to have to do that extra work to fully help heal those versions of him who were traumatized in his subconscious. And then there's ancestral trauma. You might follow the thread of your reaction and you're like, I'm having a hard time finding what's at the end of this. Like, I can't find like a precise traumatic event or events, and it's not a negative program. So then what is it? That's usually a clue that your DNA is expressing the trauma of your ancestors. So if you have these really generalized triggers and responses, that can be a clue that it's ancestral. And so lineage clearing is really useful for that, to be able to say, all right, I'm having this anger and grief, and I don't really know where it's coming from exactly. Well, it might be anger and grief from your ancestors written in your DNA. That stuff absolutely cultivates and magnifies in our reality. Why do you think culture change is so slow? Because we get into these bodies that are full of all the trauma of our ancestors, and we keep expressing that trauma. Even if we don't have a whole lot of personal trauma, it'll still get expressed through us. this is such beautiful work, and it's something that actually gives you as a human being complete and total power over your reality and a lot more control over change in your culture and society. Culture change and society change is an inside job. So, what do you want to cultivate? What do you want to replace that anger and grief with? Unconditional love, different qualities of light. That's what we want to replace it with. We're moving the density out of the way and building our capacity for light. So right now I'm working on a sort of a cheat sheet for these processes. So it's sort of like a flow chart. So I'm working on this and I'm going to send it out to all of you via email. So if you'd like to sign up for my newsletter, or if you want to give people access to this, just come sign up. Then you'll be able to get emails from me. And I'm going to send this out to you for free with lots of clear resources to help you. Because this is one of those equations that makes a big difference for all of us as we're watching ourselves spin out more, as we're watching ourselves really addressing big, huge egoic chunks that are getting shook up to the surface by the earth. Because the earth says, hey, look, I do really want humans to be here, but all of you have to be on my frequency. She's continued to sort of sort us via frequency. And so that's key. If we want to keep working here, if we want to keep creating the golden age, the new earth, which is up to us to co-create with the planet, if we want to keep doing that, we need to keep healing our trauma and our ancestral trauma in order to build our capacity for light and match her frequency. Because no longer are humans going to be allowed to continue to subjugate the earth, and good. It's, it's that us against the woods thing, right? It's an ancient way of being that separated us from nature. That's why I told my husband, no, this isn't just 3 years of us trying to deal with things coming out of the woods. It's human beings having lost their original position in the Garden of Eden. What is the Garden of Eden? The whole planet. The whole planet's the Garden of Eden. We had a position as caretakers, as beings who were meant to be in service to the earth. And when we lost our position, we did so because we stopped being in service to the earth. We became in service to self. That's what the foundation of New Earth will be. It's going to be us back in service to the earth. That's what's happening at the moment. That's why a lot of all this stuff is finally coming to a head. The financial system over the next 6 months will be completely turned upside down. Gold and silver have finally popped out of their fake ceilings. There's a lot of changes going on, but all that's on the surface. What's really causing those waves? What's the sea serpent under the water really causing the waves? The earth. It's been the earth the whole time. And our bodies are of the earth. Our bodies evolved on the earth. The DNA was put here, yeah, but our bodies evolved on this planet. They are made for this planet, not the other way around. The planet was not made for humans. So that's going to be interesting how this arises in all of our lives, right? That's the number one thing you can be doing right now. Every time you find something occurring on the outside that's disturbing or problematic, look at yourself. Look at your reaction and your trigger. So that's the way you're going to manifest more light in your life. That's the way you'll be able to cultivate light in your life and change the world around you. And it's the only way. It's the only way that works. And then you attract people who are of that same mindset to be in your life. You attract the people, places, and things that needed to be there to support. And your field gets larger and more expansive and more full. And then eventually what will happen is all these fields will merge and we will regain the true internet of connection, the true internet of energetic connection that is from source through each other. That means human beings will be able to be a lot more psychic and telepathic, be a lot more intuitive and empathetic, be more compassionate and non-judgmental of ourselves as well as others. That's what we're shooting for at the moment, right? So I'm good at making things deceivingly simple. Emotional processing is not super easy, even though the steps are easy. Trying to go in and welcome grief, especially if you've lost someone you love, that's really hard. To welcome anger and frustration, that's tough. To go into fear instead of running away from it seems like that would be counterintuitive, but yet that's the exact path that we all have to follow. So I want to also address a couple of things that came through, questions that people emailed me. People are still feeling really lost about what are their soul skill sets. What is the purpose? What is their purpose? And I want to point out that the purpose is the same for everyone. The purpose is always the same for any consciousness. There's a universal purpose for all of us. We're here to keep informing source about what is love, and also in that discovery, what is not love. That is the purpose of this universe. It's the question the universe was based on. Other universes have different questions that they're answering. But this one's all about what is love, and also discovering, well, what is love not? That's your purpose. You're here to feed back into the source field, even though it's an illusion that you are an individuated consciousness. You're here to feed back into the source field all of your experiences, all of your pain, all of your joy. When you feel pain, when you are grieving, when you are angry, source feels pain. Source grieves. Source feels angry. When you're happy, source feels happy. That's the truth. So that's the purpose too. All this bad, horrible stuff happening in our lives, it's not going to kill us. Even if you leave the body, it won't destroy you. Your consciousness is endless. You are an immortal being living in a body that is a wonderful, organic, symbiotic machine. That's your true self. So that's really key to consider at all times. Wow, this really hurts. It might physically hurt to be a human. It might be painful, physically, emotionally, spiritually, you name it. None of that can truly actually hurt you, your true self. It's there for you to fully experience so that source can learn through you. That's the point. In the meantime, the illusion of free will is that we get to decide what we're going to do with these lives. It was divine will all along, but we really learn that by surrendering. So in the meantime, what can you figure out for your life and how? I'll use myself as an example. I always thought I had these three very clear skill sets: a healer, a warrior, and obviously a psychic. So I really worked hard at advancing those soul skill sets. I did a lot of emotional processing, but I also learned how to use the tools of those soul skill sets. And the reason I knew that I had those things is because I have a great desire to help heal people, places, and things. I also have a great desire to protect them. So that's where the warrior piece comes in. And I have the ability to see into other dimensions all the time without any boundaries to that. So I thought, well, that's a great way to help serve people too. So that's a clue. First, you got to figure out, what are you being called to do in service to the world? At no point really does it have to do with yourself all the time. It really has to do with what vulnerable group is showing up in your attention right now. Who are you being asked to serve? So for me, as a galactic anthropologist, someone who's studying human beings on the playing field of the galaxies, and also as a quantum anthropologist, someone who's studying how the quantum reality of this universe affects us being human, what I saw and see in general is that human beings are a vulnerable group. We've been in subjugation for a long time. So I love human beings so much that I got multiple science degrees simply studying humanity. That's how much I love human beings. So that might have been obvious at first, but it really wasn't necessarily. I kind of bought into this idea that I had to have a niche group. And eventually I was like, my niche group is humans. All humans are a marginalized and subjugated group in this galaxy. But that's my mindset, right? That's the layer of reality I work from. Now, maybe your layer of reality is a lot more personal. Maybe you've been noticing that all your friends and all these people around you are having children, and these vulnerable moms who are pregnant or giving birth or who have just given birth, they really need extra support, and that's really showing up in your life right now. Maybe that's coming to your attention. Well, that's the vulnerable group that needs to be addressed for you. I'd hone in on them and say, what do they really need exactly? And how can I work with them? You don't need to know your exact soul skill sets to be able to know what vulnerable group you're here to serve at the moment. And that group can change. So maybe for a few years you were a doula, and then now it's going to be animals at the animal shelter because that's come to your attention. Don't worry so much about the soul skill sets. Consider really, what is the vulnerable group you're here to serve at the moment? And what are you good at to be able to help them with that? Maybe you're a really good strategist, so being able to do charity fundraising for the animal shelter would be something easy for you. Or maybe you're a really good harmonizer and you could easily go into a place and reorganize the system to make the energy flow better and make adoptions easier. I'm just throwing some ideas out here, but that's the kind of mindset you might go in having, because in the end, we all release our soul skill sets in order to access all soul skill sets in oneness. And by simply going in and saying, who am I being asked to serve right now? And what am I attracted to doing in that service? Exactly. That's the kind of questions you want to ask yourself. Not necessarily, what are my soul skill sets? Because then somebody might give you a name for a soul skill set. I mean, I've kind of categorized them, but I'm the one naming them. So maybe those names aren't right for you. What matters most is who you're being asked to serve and what you feel you're good at offering, even if it's something simple, like doing better accounting for the shelter or helping a mom empty and fill her dishwasher right after she's given birth. What a wonderful way to serve and not necessarily worry about which soul skill set you're using while you're filling the dishwasher, right? All that comes through naturally. And being able to find what those skill sets are, it can be really fun. But in the end, I always do encourage people not to be attached to them. So I don't really have any soul skill sets anymore. I have access to all of them when needed. And so do you. We enter into that place in oneness. So that's a real place. It has a sign above the door. It says, no one may enter here. Because you can't have an identity to be in oneness with everything. Yet, when you release yourself of identity, you get access to much more. So now I don't work in the library, I am the library. And there's a lot less tendency to cling on to my attachments and my expectations about reality now. So I can be free to be in surrender to the divine will that moves through me. And that's the same for you too. So I saw some questions that had come through about that. Let's see what other questions are showing up on our Q&A board. Yeah, so Lynn actually is mentioning, what do I notice I love and I'm good at and excited by? Those are the kinds of questions, right, that she's asking to discover what she's really good at. It's her asking those questions. What do I love? What am I excited by? What do I notice in my attention that's trying to grab my attention? Exactly. Start there. Start there and ask yourself these questions regularly, because those things may change and evolve. I always like to say, one of the worst things we do to kids is ask them what they want to be when they grow up. Because first off, it makes them start worrying about the future instead of staying in the moment. It causes them to feel that they must be in a specific kind of societal box in order to give back. And it takes them away from asking the better question, what do I love right now? What excites me right now? That's the question we ought to ask kids and ourselves regularly. So Susan says, I've been quite ill this week. Am I recalling that this is a common ascension symptom? Yeah, I think, I always like to look at it as physical, emotional, spiritual. They're all related. So if you're going through big spiritual changes and your body ends up going into illness, it might be that there's trauma and resistance to the changes that you've made spiritually, which need to be detoxed or addressed. Or vice versa. You catch a cold. Well, what's the virus trying to tell you spiritually? And in the meantime, then, noticing our emotions about how we might be feeling, right? So it could be one or the other. There might be a spiritual message coming through the illness, or the illness is the spiritual outcome of your inner work, right? So that's a good way to look at it. And so Lynn asks, is this work on trauma helped by emotional processing? Yes, that's the point. Processing works on emotional trauma. Trauma is the number one block for all of us. It's the one thing that creates the most density in our reality. And that's what we're shifting. That's what we're always working on. In order to attain enlightenment, we fully stand in that constant work of processing out the trauma. And then eventually you get to a point where you're just doing upkeep. Like my cat died the other day, and I processed that trauma immediately. And I really looked at, did this trigger anything else, other traumas? No, because actually my dog had died last November in a terrible accident. And so I had processed any old traumas around the loss of animals. And so when I was processing the loss of my cat, Mr. Buttons, well, I was upkeeping my field because that trauma had just occurred. So I could address that alone. I didn't have anything from the past to deal with at that moment. I had cleaned up that trauma already. But then I'm in upkeep. So that doesn't mean I'm currently always in upkeep, because I'm always finding little things and traumas and issues and ego, plenty of ego to deal with, right? So that's the key. So Leslie has got a really interesting thing for us to look at a little later in our talk today, regarding pillars of light. We will be building a pillar of light today. I've got an idea about what I'd like to do, and my friend Leslie has taken this up as well, and I encourage you too to do it. It's so easy to build a pillar of light with your friends and whomever wants to join you. And so by doing one today, you'll learn how to do them, and I encourage you to do them everywhere. Do them, create these pillars of light. They're spiritual structures. Play with them and create them. You'll learn how to do it today. Leslie's got one that she'd like you to put your intentions in, and I'll name where it's at here. She built this beautiful pillar of light at the Yellowstone Tetons that she activated at the full moon. So there's a beautiful pillar of light. Leslie, type in exactly what your intent was with that pillar so people can come with their intentions as well, because I don't recall exactly. But when we build pillars of light, we'll have an intent, and it's super easy to do, but it's very powerful because we create then a fourth dimensional spiritual object through our intent and through our will. And then that object then transmits those same intentions, right? It's like planting seeds energetically and having them transmit beyond ourself in real time without us having to do that work necessarily. So that can be a really fun way to help the planet right now and help human beings get back into frequency with the planet. Awesome. Caroline's saying, hey, I build pillars of light every day. Woohoo! Exactly. Once you learn how to do it, it's so easy. And it's such a wonderful thing. All right, so I'm scanning back up onto my onto the comments here. And I'm gonna address anything I see here, of course. So Nikki's saying, if we're not capable of feeling, does that mean we have less trauma? Kind of. Feeling in the emotional body ought not to go away necessarily, but the bad reactions are the ones that go away. The triggers go away. So, for example, I know I keep coming back to my cat again, but it was like the most recent traumatic example I can think of that just affected my whole household and me too. Like I'd said, I'd addressed a lot of the trauma around my animals dying last November when my dog died, and it took me like 2 straight months to get through that. It was a lot of trauma. But then when my cat died, I noticed, wow, I'm not having as an extreme of a reaction as I did to my dog. So I went in and I checked on that. Is the lack of my extreme reaction because I had fully worked on the trauma? And I asked my heart and I asked my gut, because they help me stay on track. You know, it's the 3 brains. We don't have just one brain. So your heart and your gut can really help you out with this stuff when your brain's not sure. And my heart and gut said, yes, you have addressed the trauma, which is why you're not having as difficult of an emotional reaction. Oh, I cried, yes. But I didn't have the same incredible weight and pulling down of my consciousness into sorrow, depression, anxiety, trauma, you name it. because that was already addressed. So I could really stay in the moment with my grief around my cat, fully process it, and then step out of it and be able to help my family around me who was having a much harder time. So it's not that you'll lack feeling, you'll lack negative reactions because then you've cleared what keeps pinging it, right? So instead of it hitting my trauma and then blowing up, it could just go right through me and I could address it in the moment. And then the trauma around my cat doesn't have to stay in my field, right? So trauma builds up, builds up, builds up. It acts like a big wall that gets pinged and affected by events around you, by people, places, things, comments, deeds, you name it, reality. And then you'll feel, but you won't remain in the traumatic feeling. So that's the outcome of processing, is that you move through events really quickly then when trauma happens, and then you're in upkeep mode because it's not pinging that density, right? So that's what it ought to look like. All right, so Caroline says, I can manifest, but I can't afford it. For example, a farm. Yeah, so that's actually the mindset we want to remove ourselves from, Caroline, because you're saying, well, only money is going to get me this farm, and that's actually not true. There's a lot of different ways that a farm could come into your life. So we then are trapped in that field of limitation around value to say, well, I can't afford the things that I actually want to manifest. Well, first off, there's no farm in the whole wide world that's truly worth whatever amount of money they say. That's not true value. All the land on this planet, your body, all the objects you have around you have infinite value. That's actually the truth. Release yourself from that field of limitation around false value. Money is no different than a hammer. And Caroline, you're not going to just pile up a whole lot of money and say that you can afford things. That's not really how the world works. Work inside. Release yourself of the expectation and the desire and the attachment. Visualize what you want. Emotionally recognize it. Release it to source fully. And then ask yourself, what's one small thing I can do today to manifest having a farm in my life? What's one small thing right now? If we say, well, I can't afford it, we've immediately blocked our path in front of us to watching a future unfold that we ought to understand that we don't actually have full control over that. It's the divine will that does. If you ask for something and you expect it in only a certain framework or box, then you may not ever receive it because you ought to have released the expectation fully and the attachment to that outcome so fully. Then it may come to you in miraculous ways. I have like a really strange but very simple example for this. At one point, I was playing with this book called Energy Squared, written by Pam Grout, Grout. I highly recommend it. It's got several exercises in it. So Pam Grout wrote this great book. One of the exercises, you ask the source field to let you see something new that you haven't seen before. So for me, I asked the source field, all right, cool. I'd like to see a pink car within the next week. So the only parameters I had is that I'd like to see a pink car. I didn't determine that I had to see a pink car on the street in person, or that I had to see a pink car only on the Facebook feed or something. I just said, I want to see a pink car and I'd like to see it in a week's time. And then I released it. Well, I did indeed see a pink car. In fact, I walked right past it, but it could have come in any other form. It could have come in on a magazine, but I made sure not to put very clear parameters around that because I know the source field will show me what I want to see or want to manifest or give me these opportunities if I make sure not to be attached to the outcomes and attached to the exact ways I'll receive things. Right? And my friend did something similar. She lives out in the woods of Canada. And she said, I'd like to see a kangaroo. And she said, Elizabeth, I just don't believe this is going to happen. I don't watch TV. I don't read magazines. I don't read the newspaper. How is Source going to show me a kangaroo? And I said, release yourself from the expectations that that has to happen a certain way and be open to the miraculous ways the source field will show you a kangaroo. And a couple of days later, she emails me and says, you'll never believe it. I walked outside and I looked up in the sky, and there was the biggest cloud in the shape of a perfect kangaroo. So I know that sounds very silly and not necessarily easily comparable to desiring to have a farm and realizing, hey, I can't afford it right now. But the fact is at the foundation, it's the same. We must release all our desires. I like to actually imagine putting all my things that I want to manifest into a little bottle, right? And I put it out into the source field. I watch it float away, knowing that source will receive that. But I also surrender any of the ways that I think it might come to me fully. And then I ask myself, always in the moment, what can I do in this moment to make it easier for those things to come to me? Maybe it's simply working on your trauma around money. Maybe it's just simply working on that right now. That's wonderful. Great start. Okay, so um, let's see. Someone is asking, do we remove trauma with emotional processing? Yes, absolutely. And look for that in your email at some point this week. I'm going to make sure you have this flow chart about how that all works and the exact easy ways you can work with these different kinds of trauma and layers of trauma. I'll make sure you have that. And you can share it freely with whomever you like. I feel that this is the number one thing humans can be doing in the moment to attain enlightenment. So we're flipping over to dark matter real quick. Daki says, dark matter in the cosmos or the shadow dark in my own processes seem to me to be simply what our conscious awareness is beginning to address. As in, it is what I or we don't know yet. It's a mystery. And the realm of mystics, human collective intelligence, is sniffing out the mystical realms as cosmologists experiment and look for measurable results. And they label what they see and what they don't see. It excites me, and I feel proud of us for engaging in this. I love that. What is it that we see? What is it that we don't see? We're getting into realms now as human beings where all the suppressed technology is going to be released sooner than later, I hope. It is slowly happening, where the true discoveries of what we know and what we don't know will continue to unfold, and the measurable results we experience will point us to the bridging of science and spirituality. And I think you're right, Daki. The attempt to discover dark matter, they're saying, there must be dark matter because we don't know what's out there creating all that gravity. And then they're looking for something that they've named that they actually don't know if it exists or not. And human beings are challenged to do that inside ourselves too. It's true. And I feel like the discovery of trauma inside ourselves and the shifting of trauma is very similar. It is the mystery, mysticism. They have similar words, similar word roots, right? That this is us leading into the bridging of science and spirituality, getting spiritual measurable results as well as physical ones. In fact, it's all one thing anyway. I'm also proud of human beings for engaging. And thank you about the kitty cat. It's been a few weeks and we're doing okay. We miss him, but you know how it is. So someone's mentioning, is all this happening because we're facing it square on? Yeah, definitely. If humans had been beaten around the bush at this point until now, well, it's over. There's only one way for humans to go, and it's going to be that we must be in harmony with the earth. We don't have any side roads to go distract ourselves anymore. That's what it's going to take for human beings to live on the planet still. And we're at that really big point, right? Martine wants to point out, and I always butcher this word, you guys, does the Ho'oponopono, oh boy, it's that beautiful work around thank you, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and I probably got it all wrong. But I think that's a very precious way to end an emotional process. So we welcome a difficult emotion, we go in, we fully welcome it, we do trauma work around it, and then we can end that process either in a heart command, dear heart, please lift all of this density and dark energy, trauma, and negative programming out of my whole body and field now. And then you take a big deep breath. Dear heart, fill my whole body and field with pure source light now. Then you take another deep breath. You can end a big process with that, or the process of thank you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you. That's another great way to end an emotional process, right? I just love that. Martine, thanks for bringing it up again. And yes, it can really help with shadow aspects, right? Because we're bringing it back on ourselves. All right, I need to be in gratitude. I need to be in humility. I need to be in pure unconditional love and forgiveness. What a wonderful way to end the shifting of a dense energy or trauma, right? Good. So Mary wants me to say more about the financials of what's going on in the next few months. It's hard for me to say exactly because I'm not an expert in economies by any means. But I think that the United States right now is in a corner because currencies are changing. No one wants to base their currencies off of a foundational currency that's fiat, which means it's basically fake. And the United States is in an important choice point at the moment. If we don't get gold and silver backed currency, the world will drop us as their foundational currency. And that is going to be a massive wake-up call. The whole planet's financial system is changing at the moment. We need to have real solid value backing our currency. Gold and silver are the very best things to back currency with and always has been. This is good news in the long run. And it's going to be a challenge. I don't know what it's going to look like exactly. We're in a massive change financially, but remember, that's just the surface. What's really going on underneath? That's mysticism. It's the earth changing. And humans will have to meet her where she's at, not vice versa. I like to really look at that, and I highly suggest you listen to anything from Jim Sinclair on those matters. Jim Sinclair is one of the world's most prominent economists. They call him the Nostradamus of the economy, and he's got a lot to say. Jim Sinclair, just check him out all over YouTube. I highly recommend that. Yeah, so Daki says, the planet was not made for humans statement is a potentially rather radical pronouncement. Right? Well, I think that's the doorway, isn't it? The doorway into a deeper truth about what humans are all about, what we're capable of, both destructive and creative. Yeah. So Emma's saying, hey, I'm in Scotland right now. We seem to have a lot of dragons around. I totally have been noticing that. What are these dragons in the first place? Lots of people seeing them more. I certainly have been, in a very physical way. They're seeing dragons, they're having dragon dreams and experiences. Well, that's because the earth is raising in her frequency, right? That creates doorways for other dimensional intelligence, which is a real, actual, measurable thing. Other dimensional intelligence is fifth dimensional beings, the angelic, light talkers from the eighth dimension, beings from the higher dimensions, and dragons are one of them. Dragons have always been bearers of news, bearers of deep intelligence and wisdom, and the intelligence of nature comes through their wisdom, of course. That's why I think they keep coming up more than ever at the moment, is because the Earth's frequency has opened the door to that dimension, and we ought to be really excited that we're having more contact. That's really cool. I've been learning some amazing things from the dragons. They've honestly saved my butt. So I'm really grateful. Thank you, dragons. Yeah, so Caroline mentions she does understand the trauma around money. Gosh, you guys, that's like, if that's the one thing we work on right now as a human race, is the grief and trauma around money and poverty, and we work really hard on that in our DNA and our experiences, especially as the financial system's changing so much, we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. Look at that in yourself. Work with the processing around it, right? Greet the fear around the money. Walk into it. Fully welcome it into your body. Find out where it is in your body and welcome it there. Maybe it's in your heart, your throat. It might move when you welcome it. Welcome it in each part of your body. We're not the only ones who've suffered with that trauma, obviously. All of our ancestors have too, many of whom watched their own family members starve to death. And that's written in your DNA too. And that's what you're here to heal. If you're even here with me at all in any capacity, then you're here to help heal your own DNA and lineage. You're awake and you're here to do that. And do it for yourself too, of course. But that fractals out into reality, and that changes the way we value things in a very dramatic way, which then continues to be cultivated. And we ought to want to cultivate a society that takes deep quality care of the vulnerable first in our local communities. Because if you care for the vulnerable first, no matter what, then everybody else is going to be okay. And I'm not necessarily talking about nation states or states like in a republic like the United States. That's not how humans function, people. Humans function locally. Humans function locally. I'm not talking about a nation state taking care of the vulnerable. Not at all. I'm talking about local communities taking care of the vulnerable. That's where all the change will happen. It's got to be from you in your physical reality, inside you, and then the relationships you have in the physical. That will then turn into higher levels of reality being balanced, but not the other way around. It can't be nation states focusing in on the individual. It's got to be the individual focusing in on themselves and their relationships around them. That's how human culture functions and changes. It's not from the top down. It's up to us as individuals to take that on. I want to define that really clearly. Good. Okay, so Nikki reminds me, of course, that I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you is the exact method of the special Hawaiian blessing that's such a great ending to any work that we might do. Yeah, and Marianne says she asks for that particular blessing to run on autopilot in your life. How cool is that? So you can actually ask your heart to do that. We could combine the two and say, dear heart, please run the I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you process indefinitely in my body and field now. Good. And then you've programmed your body to do that for you. You can program your body to do whatever you want. It's a machine. It listens to you. It obeys you. It loves you. Good. Okay, so I do want to mention real quick, because I do like to help the people in my community, and they help me. And I'm so blessed to be able to do trades and wonderful things like that. And my friend Nikki made me this necklace, and she's made me several. And I wanted to mention that because she does have an Etsy shop. And this is really beautiful. It's all amethyst, and it really fits the energy of unconditional love and compassion right now. But she has her little Etsy shop up there. And in the future, I want you to be able to put your works out there. I'm interested in us being a real community where we say, hey, I'm out here, I'm trying to make my way, and I make these beautiful necklaces woven with light. Hey, awakened community, if this resonates with you, come connect with me. And you can do that especially with my little Slack community that I've got going, the Circle community. This is the free part of being part of my community, is these monthly calls. But then we're on this online platform. So if you're looking for an alternative to regular social media and you want to talk with people in a safe place and get support, my community on Slack is a really great spot to enjoy connection. And we do daily meditations and healing circles and all sorts of really fun things together. You can find out about that if you go to my homepage, Seer and Scientist, and you go down to the Circle community. It talks a little bit about what it's all about. So that's found on the homepage, and then you can click to join the online community, and that'll show you the page that talks about the membership. The membership's $13 a month, but I give scholarships. So if you're in a place and you need some extra help and you want to pay it forward in a different way, just let me know. You can email me at Elizabeth@SeerandScientist if you'd like a scholarship, and come join us online. Nikki's there. She runs a special circle each month, which is why she gave me this necklace, because she wanted to make sure that that energy got onto these videos. But I just want to support each of you, and we can all support each other in this way without it being too markety or salesy or whatever. But I just want to bring that up at the moment for you to get that extra support from me and everybody else. It's on my cell phone, and people post up every day, and I'm on there, and I get such a wonderful honor to be able to speak with everyone daily on our little platform. I'm not even really on Facebook anymore. I just like being in our little online community. So it can be a big difference, a shift. Yeah, so today at 5 p.m. Pacific time, there is a healing circle on our Slack community. So if you wanted to hop on that healing circle, it's very special. Nikki leads that. And very good heart-centered group. It's a little different each week. And it can be really, really profound. And you can be at the center of a healing circle, people focusing in on you and your trauma and helping you. What a powerful way we can support each other to have that focused healing effort coming through us. And then to be in receiving and also to be in giving of that, right? So Caroline wants to say, we're going to be okay. And she's really excited about the group calls, healing all the abuses, healing the trauma. She's really here. She's ready. She's willing. And she's able. She's got this. And I'm really proud for you, Caroline, because willingness is the first step, isn't it? By golly, we're all really willing. We're willing to heal from the inside out. We're willing to watch light cultivate in our lives and in the lives of others in our communities, and then literally get to see the earth change, all of humanity change because of what we did on the inside. That's what we get to look forward to if we really put our nose to the grindstone around this trauma. We also are willing, right, to ask, who are the vulnerable that I can serve right now? To be in selfless service is the number one way to shift out of ego. That's a really wonderful question to ask. What else are we willing to be in and do? We're here because we're willing to go through the tough stuff to get to the other side, to advance our souls to the other side, which is a state of high consciousness, a state of more light and less density, a state of less reaction and more compassion and non-judgment. That's what we're willing to do. We're willing to change and heal the issues we've had with the sick, crazy societies we live in and the matrix system, the slave system on this planet, to change inside ourselves and free ourselves of it so that we can watch the rest of humanity meet that next level. That's the key. That's what we're willing to do. And so I'm just really excited about that because the outcomes are hopeful. And no matter what happens, we're going to really make it. Humans are really adaptable and we're smart. We're so smart. In fact, human beings are a very brilliant race and highly coveted as outside the box thinkers in the galaxy. And as we become more galactically oriented, which will certainly happen once we've healed our relationship with the planet, then we're going to see just how important of the players we really are, just how important our role is in the galactic, not just the global. But first we got to start with ourselves, right? Good. I'm going to pull up my little Q&A board here once more and see what else is popping through. So Kate says, Kate has been using colloidal gold, which is something that I've mentioned in other platforms. Colloidal gold is a really ancient remedy for pain, arthritis, and regeneration of the body. And she says that she can't really find any recommended daily dose. That's because there isn't one. So I like to say, start with a teaspoon if you're going to take if you're going to take any concentration of a colloidal gold. Start with a teaspoon of whatever concentrate that is and see how you feel. It's going to depend on the person, Kate, which is why these companies don't have a clear defined daily dose. Just start with a teaspoon and see how it makes you feel. If you really like that, then stick with it. If it doesn't seem to do anything, up your dose a little. But you'll want to really keep close tabs on how you're feeling. So be a little bit of a spiritual scientist for yourself, right? See how you really feel mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually when you try out just a little bit at a time. Because it's better to start with a little and then build it up if you'd like to see if it has better results for you. So Kathy's asking, how can I and we help to protect the rainforests and all aspects of nature? Well, in this case, I think it's very important to make sure that you buy products that don't harm the rainforest, right? When we buy a product that has, for example, palm oil in it, then we know for sure it's harming the rainforest because palm forests are being planted in monocrops and destroying large swaths of rainforest. Buy products that not only don't harm the rainforest, but then will push the demand for products that don't harm the rainforest. That's the number one thing you can do from your chair to help save the rainforests is vote with your money. And then, of course, spiritually building pillars of light all over the rainforests. Pick a rainforest. There's tons all over the world, and reefs too. So don't buy products that harm reefs. For example, a lot of different sunscreens can get into the water and hurt our oceans. So you'd buy sunscreens that are natural based that won't harm the oceans. And then that pushes demand for products that don't harm the oceans. It's actually very powerful. The boycotting of products and the buying of others has definitely made big changes in the market and big changes on the ground. So don't underestimate that. And also getting away from single serving plastics is very important because many of the rainforests are being destroyed in order to extract oil. And so that oil, well, what is it mainly used for? Single serving plastics. So I bought like metal straws that I'll use indefinitely, stainless steel straws, so I don't have to use any plastic straws anymore. It's just little stuff like that. We use regular bags at the grocery store instead of getting more plastic bags. It's the small steps, Kate, that make quite the difference. And when everyone's doing it, well, then there's no profit in it anymore, right? Good. So Leslie wants us to know about this pillar of light in the Tetons, which you can add any of your intentions and energy to. The purpose is to create a field that triggers all life forms who enter it into evolving into the highest consciousness version of themselves. She's picturing the purest divine energies and the purest earth energies flowing through the pillar, activating all who enter into the Yellowstone and Teton national parks. What a cool way to use a pillar of light. So then that emanates across all those parks, but of course beyond that into humanity too, encouraging the development of that personal highest divine light that comes straight from source, right? To encourage the evolution of all the people, places, and things that might get touched by that light. And don't underestimate light. We can see light from the beginnings of our universe right now. That's how powerful light is. It goes all the way across the universe, even your own personal light. Good. So Mary is saying, can this idea of not feeling also mean that the trauma has been so intense that the person has disassociated from part of themselves? Yeah, definitely. So that not feeling, well, that's going to be, hey, whew, am I disassociated? Because I feel numb, right? That would be a clue. Numbness is different than non-reaction. So non-reaction is, well, I feel the sadness and I'm welcoming it, but it's not hitting anything in me that's going to magnify the trauma. So I'm going to welcome that and then it moves through. But then it doesn't remain to then build up another layer of trauma. Numbness, however, is a clue that you might have so much trauma built up that you might be disassociating. It's a very important difference. So Len mentions, I'm consciously not afraid of death, which my husband has given me as a gift. This allows me to possess joy. No one comprehends this. I'm not in denial. So Lynn is saying she's processed, for example, the loss of her beloved husband. And other people have been writing me about the losses of their loved ones. So when more than one person writes me about it, it's up for the collective, right? The loss of our people, the loss of our loved ones. How shattering that is. Well, there's something on the other side of that shattering. There is something on the other side of that grief. There can be hope, joy, love. You'll never necessarily get over the loss of someone you love so much. That's not the point. That's not what grief is. Grief is a long process of being able to say, now this foundational part of my life is gone. How will I continue to build my life from here without them? What choices will I make now that they're gone? What will I replace that dense trauma with? Can I fully process it? It takes a long time to process loss through divorce or death, or all these different ways that we lose what we've created. We lose our pets, we lose our children. We lose so much in this life as humans. And yet there's always something to come that will fill in that gap in space. What will it be that you welcome into that space for yourself, and taking your time to do that? It turns out that people can do that. Side, Lynn is saying, I feel fully in love. I feel fully in joy. Even though she's still sad she lost her husband, that doesn't go away, but she's in full joy and full love. She took what giant gap there was in her life and slowly but surely filled it to the brim with the things that she knows she wants herself, and also what her husband would have wanted for her to do in his leaving. Not easy stuff. So Rebecca's got a couple of really great questions here. Why do animals attack each other at all? Is it a reflection of collective trauma? I know people who don't kill spiders and are vegetarians, but then you say to eat the foods of our ancestors. Can you reconcile this for me? Two things. That dog killed my cat because she was allowed to continue to kill animals. So she had killed some of our chickens, some of their own pets. She'd already been on this. It was our neighbor's job to have trained his dog. The dog is a reflection of him, not the collective of humanity, not some other matrix programs. Animals are built a way. Cats kill mice because they can only eat meat. And that's really important for them to be able to allowed to do if they're going to survive, is to be able to eat only meat. And what about this vegetarian piece? Well, as just vegetarianism is different than veganism. Vegetarianism, you can still eat cheese or fish, eggs. Just depends on what kind of vegetarian you're working with. Veganism is a modern luxury diet. We have the luxury of having foods that offer protein and vitamins that we would have missed otherwise. But there's never been a culture on this planet who's been vegan. Even the most strictest religions, even today, even in the past, were never vegan. The strictest I can think of are the Jainists. The Jainists, they are those of the belief that all conscious beings ought not to be harmed, but they still eat cheese, and they still, they'll eat fruits that have fallen from the tree. They won't pick a fruit from a tree. That's very strict, right? But they eat cheese. Why exactly? Well, first off, I know there's a lot of different discussions around whether or not humans are built to even eat meat or not. And I think that we are, but I think it's more important that we have a different relationship with our food, and we understand that all food is made of light. If you're going to eat an animal that suffered, that food's not going to have the same amount of light as a meat that from perhaps that was from your own farm, or that you hunted or your family members hunted yourself, and they lived incredibly happy lives. There's a big difference energetically between those two types of foods that are meat. And furthermore, if you look at a carrot and a steak energetically, and you go all the way down to the source of it, it's all made of the same energy, the source field. So are we. And so is everything around us. So I feel that there's an unnecessary amount of guilt being put on people around what they're eating because they're so separated from their food sources in the first place. What can we do to heal that? Plant food. Plant food. Be part of your food's reality. Don't be separated from it any longer. Find out where all your food came from. Diligently require food in your life that comes from happy, sustainable, and beautiful practices that are full of love and care. That's what I think will help all of us get local, require it for yourself, and have a relationship with your food and the farmers. That is the number one way we will change these awful systems that torture conscious beings instead of allowing them happy, beautiful lives and swift, gentle ends. If necessary, eat less meat. Human beings didn't nearly eat as much meat as we do now. It's crazy how much we eat now. Humans did not do. We were hunting, and we'd get meat maybe, maybe if you were lucky, once a week. Limit the amount of meats in your diet. Make sure that what you're voting with your money requires from the systems of the very highest levels of quality. Do what you can. If you can't afford that, that's okay. Beating ourselves at it, that leaks a whole lot of energy into the system, and it's just going to steal your energy away. So I like to say, eat like your ancient ancestors did, your really ancient ancestors, and eat and grow local. Just start there, and you'll start to see how much more light is in your embodiment and your reality. That's the reconciliation. It's all made of light. And how much more light can you bring into your life with the kinds of foods you're eating? Where did they come from? Who grew them? Who helped raise the cows or the animals? Who grew those carrots exactly? If you know who did that, you're really on the right track, because local food is what's going to save us all. And it's not going to be a global food system anymore in the end. If we're going to get real about how we can be in service to the earth, we have to get our hands deep into the soil again. All of us do. Either by having community gardens, encourage efforts like that in your neighborhood. like the idea, more food, less lawns. Good. So Rebecca says, in a recent interview with Anya, she said that she no longer sends light to negative people because it only empowers them. Yeah, that was an interview I did with Lori, and that's what she said. And yet, Rebecca says, I always heard that sending light to our enemies is the correct thing and that they'll absorb what they can handle. Well, I don't really like to see us as enemies in the first place. And secondly, I radiate light. I don't necessarily send it or hold it. So if you're radiating light, you're letting that light go to where it needs to go. Don't worry about where it needs to go. Source will handle that. Release yourself of needing to decide where the light goes. And just recognize that light influences other light. Light pulls light out. People who might be in great density, they're not your enemies. They're suffering. If they're acting crazy or being abusive, that's because they are incredible suffering and trauma and density, probably coming from their own lineage. So I just want to point that out, that that's how you might function instead of trying to send light to all these different people and then saying, well, who deserves it and who doesn't? Or is that going to just empower them? I don't think that's actually the way to think at all. I'd like to say, I'm going to radiate light. That light pulls the light out of the people who might not like me or get really triggered by me, or who are acting out in ways. Really look at their soul. What's really going on there? That's an incredibly traumatized, suffering person, not an enemy. What do they really need? They just need to be around light. It's not necessarily your job to send it to them. It's your job to radiate. Just be a star. That's my opinion, Rebecca. I hope it helps. And so the economics expert that I mentioned, Isabel, Jim Sinclair, Sinclair, Jim Sinclair, and Unity, go back into the recording to hear my speech about that. I tried not to repeat too much calls because it's all recorded and you'll find it on the video after, and you can listen to it over and over again. But being in is all about starting with yourself, then continuing to create allied groups who resonate in the same kinds of light as you, mergers that might be temporary or long-term, watching how that functions from your reality out. Many of us are completely cut off from our neighbors. That's a sign of just how sick our societies are, because human society does not function at a nation-state level. Never has. That's an illusion. You function at a 3D, physical, real-time level with the human beings around you. And from there, the rest of society comes. So a clue about how healthy a society is going to show you, well, how well do the neighbors know each other? How well do they work together? That gives you a clue of how healthy the society really is at any other level. Got to start from the ground up. And that's real time in front of you, the people that you connect with. Good. Enar says, I've been waking up exhausted lately, like I've been working hard all night, and it's nice to wake up so I can rest. Any sense? Yeah, definitely. The dream world is a place where we do a lot of work spiritually. And many of us will work in the dream realms really regularly. if you're just really over it and you need a break, I would bow to my mind and my guides and all who I might be in service to in the spiritual realm while asleep and say, I thank you so much for the opportunity to service, but I need desperately to be able to fully rest and to be able to function. So I'm going to ask for a break until I can fully rejuvenate, and then I'm back on board. We always need those times and those opportunities to rest. It's very important. And that's key. Just ask, and you'll find, oh, good, finally got a nice night's sleep. It's amazing how much just asking can do for us, right? Good. So Melina says, the better I feel about myself, loving myself in every way that I can and appreciating who I am despite everything, including my health, the more I seem to trigger other people. To put it simply, I seem to bring forth the shadow in people in a powerful way, especially in spiritual circles. It's like my presence does that. I don't even need to say anything or do anything to be attacked. Things they project on me are getting more and more. My heart instantly recognizes it's not my stuff. I feel it's probably because those people cannot appreciate themselves in a similar way that I appreciate myself. How do you deal with such situations? I'm exhausted due to long-term illness, so most of the time I just withdraw. Yeah, that's really important because here's what will happen as you build your capacity for light. The relationships you've had while you have been in a different state won't fit necessarily that same frequency. So that frequency, it fractals out, right? It grows, it cultivates from there. I want you to imagine like vines of light fractaling out, right? So then it hits the relationships that we have in a very personal way. Well, that frequency acts like shakes it all up. And what's going to come up are egoic structures for those people: judgment, resistance, attachment, expectations. That's egoic structures. So they're going to project on you, or that structure is going to come out and they're going to think it's, and they might look through it like a lens at you. What do you do about that? Well, first off, people aren't really going to be willing to look at that objectively with you, as you compassionately pointed out. You do need to compassionately point these things out. I hear you. I hear that you're feeling frustrated and that you feel I'm being dismissive of, or you doing this particular thing. I hear you. By saying that, without any buts, without any opinions, just naming, seeing, immediately that causes their soul and your soul to objectively look at what has just occurred. If someone can feel really hurt about something like that, a lot of times they'll really shift the way they're addressing you, and they'll be more apt to listen to how you feel. So if you mirror it to them and then they say, yes, that's how I feel. And then you'll say, I'd like to express the way I'm feeling about it. Would you be open to hearing my ideas, my feelings? Likely, if you've just mirrored to them what you're seeing, they may be very open to that. So then you can say to them, I feel like you're traumatized about something and that you're projecting on me because you've assumed how I'm thinking, but that's not how I'm thinking at all. It's not really how this is how I feel. And then you can ask them, does that make sense? And if they say, you're well on your way to healing whatever it was. If they say no, then maybe you can explain a little bit better and continue to mirror how they're feeling without any expectations or desires for any specific outcome, just staying in the moment. That's how you help people objectively look at whatever they might be running their energy through, whatever trauma or program or lens of reality they're running their light through. Now, not everybody's responsive to that. Maybe they're dramatically against it. Well, that's when you got to cut people off, you guys. Sometimes you got to walk away, even if it's from ones. Just tell them you need a break and that you'll be back in a month. Or not. Just let them know that you're done. And even with parents or family members or people that you care about, and if you're in a domestic situation that you're dependent on that person, don't give up. Help them to communicate with you properly. Show them how to communicate. Show them how to process by doing it yourself in front of them. And watch that unfold and cultivate. By doing it yourself in front of them, you plant seeds inside them that will break apart the structure. But do not subject yourself to abuse. There's a big difference between some, projecting and has trauma. Yeah, well, so do we. All of us do. And someone who's abusing you. And know the difference and be willing to completely cut yourself off of abuse, because that's not going to be in any way service to either of you to continue to allow that to remain and cultivate in your field. What are you going to cultivate from the inside out? That's definitely going to have a dramatic effect on the people around you. If you can maintain unconditional love as they might spin out and fracture because of that light, what does light do when you shine it on stuff? It shows you flaws. It shows you perfection. It shows you truth. That's hard. Sometimes the truth is brutal. Sometimes the flaws are deep. That's what's happening to the people around you as you love yourself more, as you cultivate true light from the inside out. And also don't put up with any abuse, right? So that's perhaps an overreaction, but that's what I've noticed for myself, that I can expect every time I reach another level of light, the people around deeply affected by it, and to have great compassion for it, name the things I'm seeing very carefully and gently, try to help people feel understood, because there's some reason why that trauma is coming up. It might be that moment of grace where you're compassionate enough and willing enough to just say, I hear you. I hear you. That could be the thing that finally allows that light all the way through. Good. So Martine is mentioning, I don't feel emotions as much as I have body feeling when there's a trigger. Is there something in my energy bodies that has fused somehow? Well, I really do think that the emotional body is fused with the human physical body. You ought to have physical feelings when you have a reaction to something. If you don't, it might be because that trauma's built up and you feel numb. So emotions can show up a lot of weird places. I've actually seen people while in process say, all the energy is now in my right arm or my ear or my forehead. What's up with that? Because the emotional body, all these bodies are fused. Your soul, your emotional body, your light bodies, your physical body are all one. They should be one. If they're not, problem. So you ought to feel different things in the body as physical feelings, and that would be correct. Then you'll welcome it there. I welcome all this pain in my right thumb. Good. Keep doing it. Watch it evolve, and then eventually it'll shift out of the body. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to try to toggle here because I've done this before. So I really want to toggle between any comments that are happening on the YouTube as well as what's going on our regular chat. So Kathleen is asking about this movie, The Biggest Little Farm. I haven't seen it, so that'll be interesting, probably worth looking at. And Marie says, oh, Martine also had an additional thing here. To wake up well rested, I heard you can ask to be put in a healing chamber while you sleep. Ask for cool stuff and see what happens. You can never really go wrong by right. And so Marie says, thank you so much for that beautifully articulated question regarding getting attacked by someone in a spiritual circle. That experience in my reality too. Absolutely. I think that our light will trigger people pretty deeply, and not to find yourself in reaction back, but to say, oh, that soul, they're suffering. I live in Kentucky, as many of you know, and the obesity epidemic is very apparent. Sugar here is something that people eat a lot. They eat a lot of sugar. And so even being here, I've gained weight because sugar's in everything. They even put it in mac and cheese. It's like, so, you know, I have to shop at Walmart for some stuff, which I don't necessarily like doing, being a very diligent Northwesterner who likes my local stuff. But the problem is, well, it's just not very easy to get things you need. So if I end up in Walmart, of course, one of the things I will notice is that a lot of people are very overweight. So what do I really see when I see that? Do I see someone who's fat and their shopping cart easy stuff, like incredible amounts of sugar and processed foods? Because pretty much every cart looks like that every time I walk past. Judgments about them and what their choices are, that's not how I think. And I don't think I have really ever thought that way. When I look at that food, I see dark energy. I see energy pulling from the person instead of nourishing them, right? And I see a soul who's trapped in a body that is full of trauma, and they forget who they are. I don't see a fat person. I don't see an obese person or an anorexic person or a heroin addict. I don't see a meth addict. I see a soul in a human body. And they are not that body. They are not the experiences and traumas they have learned from or not learned from. They are not their addictions. They are not their family's addictions. They are a soul living in a body. That's what I see. And that's a big shift in mindset for all. Maybe if you got spiritual homework this month, try to see the soul first. Ask, be able to at least just consciously know that that soul is there first, not the body, not the cart full of food, not the person working at the counter. All that's just that's changing. That's evolving. That's the 3D for you. Guaranteed change. But they are immortal. And that's who they truly are first. Speak to someone as if you're speaking to. That's the key to shifting how you're going to interact with reality and be affected by it. Not easy. Again, I'm really good at making this stuff sound easy. All right, so let's build a pillar of light. We'll spend a little extra time today because we've gone to our 2 hours, but that's okay. Let's do a pillar of light. And this one, I'd like to help bring out the light, right? So we're going to build a pillar of light that's meant to magnify the light in the soul, the true self, in all conscious beings. So it's going to be not exactly like Leslie's special pillar, which you're welcome to go visit. You just have to go imagine it there. It's just near the Tetons, helping affect all of the national parks in that area, emanating for the highest evolution of humankind and all conscious beings. In this case, our pillar is going to ask for the remembrance of all conscious beings that they are a soul first. Not huge. It's a special gift that we can give to allow that to emanate. So I'd like to build it in the taiga. The taiga is a giant swath of forest in Russia. It's one of the most important forests in the world. And that forest gives an incredible amount of oxygen to our planet. It's something like 1/3 or 1/4 of our oxygen comes from that forest. And a huge amount of that forest is on fire right now. So that forest needs some support, but it's also acting as a symbolic shift going on that forest. And that symbolic shift is the shifting of the old, the opening of the new. Fire is a really great renewer. And although it's very sad that those forests are burning, they will bounce back. They will bounce back. And change is something that we can be guaranteed. Right now, it might not seem like positive change, but just like it's really traumatic to be in this reality at the moment, and then we go in and we burn away our trauma by fully welcoming it, by recognizing it, and then by moving into it. Well, that's going to be the same. It's a beautiful spiritual symbol that, although it seems incredibly tragic, will have the outcome of renewal. And we're asking for all this trauma that's being shifted up because of the frequency of the earth in our realities. We're asking for all this trauma to be fully lifted to the surface, all of it, so we can address it together ourselves, so that we can be done with it and then watch the renewal of the light of the soul be magnified in our realities. That's what we're asking for in our pillars of light that we're going to build today. So, or the pillar of light. So let's actually imagine the taiga. We're going to drop down into the very center of it, the heart of the taiga. And so if you can kind of imagine Russia, just go right smack to the top center of Russia. That's where the taiga is. Good. And let's come together in a circle. We're coming together fully in this circle. We're imagining ourselves all together, ready to fully create this pillar of light. And we're including anyone who's going to listen to the replay, anyone who will listen to this far later and want to add their own energy to it. That includes you too. Good. All right, so we're going to start from our gut mind this time. Now just rub your belly a little bit and say hello to your gut mind. Dear gut mind, I welcome you to fully come in here. And we're going to project a special energy as a foundation for our pillar of light. And this is the energy of the earth was made for the earth. Humans, but in order to continue to cultivate harmony and to welcome human consciousness into higher states of harmony, human consciousness can ride the waves of the earth's consciousness if we're willing to be in harmony with her. And we bring this as an invitation from our gut mind to live in harmony with the earth again, not in subjugation or at war. So we take that intent and let us project it now to the center of our circle as the foundation of our circle. And you just do so by imagining that move through you with a big, deep breath into the center. So the visual I see is this fountain of many different colors and 8 different sort of strands of colors coming out of this fountain of energy. So it's an 8-sided structure, but then from the sort of strands that are coming from the center, they're just pouring out all these different colors of light. That's what harmony is, right? It's many different sounds creating something beautiful, many different colors in harmony creating something beautiful. Many different types of people, many different kinds of consciousness coming together on this planet with her many different kinds of consciousness within her experiences, all of them combining and living in harmony to create something even more beautiful than the single consciousness alone standing. Good. Now let's come into our heart space and we will project light from there. And so I'm asking, what is the quality of light and energy we need together now for this pillar of light? It comes from that same feeling, that sensation of being able to look beyond the difficult, looking beyond the things that usually would cause us to judge people, places, and things, right? To look all the way down into the very source field of everything. The source field of the food we eat, the source field of the people around us, field of our cultures, of our planet. All the different energies all come from one place. To source field first. This is a very high level of conscious thinking that can help all of us to live in harmony with each other and the planet. And that's the gift of the heart we can offer right now. Non-judgment and the ability to notice and draw the true light that is the source of all things. That is what we're projecting now. So let's take a deep breath and project it to the center of our now. I see the most spectacularly large sapphire that we've created. It's huge. This giant sapphire. So those of you who know the esoteric meanings for stones and crystals, the sapphire is at the heart of this. Good. Now let's come up into our third eye and our crown. We're going to use the whole power of our brain mind to project what's needed next. I'm asking about that. Yeah, it's one of those deceivingly simple things. The gift for all of humanity in the present moment, and to unattach ourselves from all of these outcomes and expectations. Going to help us to create better mergers, better harmony, always where the action is in the moment. That's what we're going to project now. Good. So pull up that in your mind, pull that energy up in your mind, and let's project it now. Deep breath to the very top of our pillar of light. Excellent. So I see another crystalline feature, big, huge diamond, reflecting rainbow light. So those of you that know about crystals, again, the diamond shows up, but all that rainbow light really shows me too how being able to be free of attachments and expectations about outcomes gives us our power. It activates the light bodies of the rainbow, the diamond light bodies, the rainbow light bodies. You can self-activate all of those by working in a state of non-attachment to outcomes where all your power is in the moment. That's amazing. It's really fun to look at. Good. So we have really cool, beautiful pillar of light. Let us also put just a good quality heart intention that the taiga will heal quickly and that the fires will end. Now I offer you the opportunity to take any personal intentions, perhaps ones that aren't attached to any outcomes, but in the moment, right? A personal intention for the moment that you'd like to cultivate fully from the heart space. Place that into the center of our pillar of light now with a deep breath. My intent is that all of my neighbors, all of their animals, all of my family and their relationships, communities will be brought into oneness and into the recognition of the soul, that path will be open for however those souls need it to happen, without any attachment to those outcomes or expectations about how that will happen. It's my intention, Source desires it so from the divine will, that that door is open. Good. Now let's unattach ourselves from this pillar of light energetically. So we ask to fully remove our brain mind, our heart mind, and our gut mind from this light so it can stand as it will and emanate and reflect and continue to transmit all of the blessings that we have built it with and the intentions that lie within. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. Thanks for coming live. If you came live, thank you for joining the replay if you listen later. And thank you for sharing this. If you'd like to share with friends and family who you think might like to hear about what we had to talk about today. Thank you for your questions and your experiences. Beautiful souls, I see you, I hear you. I'm here for you. If you need extra support, come join me on my website. Look at the offerings, see what pops out to you. If you're not sure, just email me. Oh, I get a lot of emails, but I really do try to answer them. Elizabeth at Seer and Scientist. And I'm here for you. So is our community on Slack too. If you'd like to join our membership on our little Slack community, it's a really great place to get support. We enjoy supporting people there the best way we can. Very good. And I just love all of you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope the rest of your July and the beginning of August is very special for you. And let me make sure to see exactly when our next circle call is. It's going to be August 31st, so the very end of August. We're going to reconnect again. And if you subscribe to my channel, then you'll get those updates about the live stream. And if you make sure you're part of my email list, those updates on the emails too, and any other interviews I might be on where you can get no cost free information. It's my favorite way to get on these interviews. And I'm just so glad that we got to connect today and build this pillar of light. So now you have two pillars of light, the one that Leslie built in the Tetons and the one that we just built in the Taiga. There's more. There's one out in the Pacific Ocean that I think it was last time. And then there's just pillars of light happening all over the place, and you're absolutely able to build them yourself if you feel drawn to it. Because they help, they really do. It's something we can do as spiritual beings, as spiritual objects that will support our continued evolution. So namaste to all of you, all my love to you, the planet, all the conscious beings, and all of your souls. Bless all of you. Mwah.